The pregnancy had been a nightmare. Diana hadn't even known how she'd become pregnant. She'd never been with anyone, and yet she found herself carrying a child. The doctors couldn't explain it. Every test had come back normal, but those 9 months were anything but. She suffered fevers, night terrors, and pains that no amount of medication could ease. By the time she finally gave birth, she was exhausted, haunted, and unsettled. But her son Daniel was perfect. His eyes shone with a calm that seemed almost unnatural for a newborn. He never cried, and as he grew, he never demanded anything. Instead, he spent his days quietly, always clutching a small Bible someone had gifted him as a child. Diana noticed how fixated he was on it. By the age of 10, he could recite entire passages. It was odd, but it seemed to keep him calm, so she let it be. Yet strange things began to happen around him. One time, their dying houseplant suddenly bloomed overnight. When her car engine wouldn't start, Daniel calmly placed his hand on the hood, and the engine roared to life. The house itself had an odd aura, a sense of peace that seemed out of place. Diana had whispered worries, fears that she couldn't explain, but she never could bring herself to question her son. Years passed, and Daniel grew into a man, wise beyond his age. His presence was almost otherworldly, and when Diana looked at him, she sometimes felt a strange fear, a feeling that he could see every flaw, every weakness, every secret she hid. And then one night, he asked her to sit down. "Mom," he said, his voice steady, eyes piercing, "I need to tell you something." Diana felt a cold sweat form on her skin. "What is it, Daniel?" He looked at her, and for the first time, there was no kindness in his gaze, only something ancient and heavy, as if he carried the weight of millennia in his soul. "My name is Jesus." Diana felt her heart skip a beat, a chill running down her spine. The air around them seemed to darken, and she could hear her own breathing, shallow and panicked. What are you saying?" she whispered, feeling a tremor in her voice. "Do you remember how you never understood your pregnancy?" he continued, his voice cold and unwavering. "You never questioned it because it felt beyond comprehension. But it wasn't a miracle, it was a consequence." Diana stared, unable to speak, her body frozen. The sins of mankind, the greed, the hatred, the selfishness, all of it needed a vessel, he said. "You were that vessel, chosen to bring me into this world, not to save humanity, but to end it." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Diana couldn't process them. She felt as though her mind was being torn apart. She wanted to scream, to deny it, but she could feel the truth in every word he spoke. "I tried to understand," he continued. "I grew up in this world, in your care, learning about people, hoping to see something worth saving. But there's nothing left to redeem. This world is beyond hope." "No," she managed to whisper, her voice choked. You can't mean that." He looked at her with a mixture of pity and detachment, as if she were no more than a passing shadow in his grand plan. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice soft yet terrifying, "I will begin. The earth will tremble, the skies will burn, and every soul will bear the weight of its own sins." Diana's heart raced, a primal terror taking hold of her. She lunged forward, desperate to reach him, to do something, but her body felt as if it were bound, every movement sluggish and weak. He didn't flinch, didn't move, simply stared with eyes that seemed to look beyond her, into some other realm. "You're not my son," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "No," he replied calmly. "I am not. I am the reckoning." The lights in the house flickered, shadows twisting and crawling along the walls. Diana felt the air grow thick, pressing down on her, and she could hear distant screams, as if they were echoing from far away. She tried to close her eyes to block it all out, but even in the darkness behind her eyelids, she could see visions, cities crumbling, oceans boiling, fire consuming everything. When she opened her eyes again, Daniel, Jesus, was gone, leaving her alone in the silent, empty room. She could feel something rising in the air, a sense of doom so intense it made her skin crawl. She knew with every fiber of her being that this was only the beginning, and somewhere far off in the distance the world began to scream.